Hey everybody, this is Peter with Tabletop Gaming Guild, and today we get the chance to take a look at another role-playing book from Free League Publishing. And if you've seen our videos here on the channel before, you know that we are big fans of Free League Publishing, not just because they make amazing original role-playing games themselves, but also because they have the right to a lot of really cool intellectual properties, settings, worlds, to make role-playing games in as well. And one of those settings is Middle-earth by J.R.R. Tolkien for The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, The Silmarillion. So if you are a fan of Lord of the Rings and Tolkien himself, and you're also a fan of role-playing games, then there's nothing holding you back from being able to play role-playing in Middle-earth. So, Free League Publishing created their game, The One Ring Second Edition, and they have begun to adapt all of their books for that game into 5e, the rule set for the greatest role-playing game of all time, according to some people. If you love rolling your d20s and you don't want to give that up, if you like your stat block the way that it is and you don't want to give that up, but you do want to play in Middle Earth, then you can do that with the Lord of the Rings role playing. And the latest book for that game is the Lord of the Rings role playing Moria, Shadow of Khazad dûm. That's right, everybody. It is time for you and your party to delve deep, maybe too deep, into the mines of Moria, into Khazad dûm, the ancient kingdom of the dwarven people of Middle Earth. You can see right up here at the top of the book, we have our 5e logo there, so you know that this is going to be 5th edition appropriate. So if this is the book for you, stick around. We're going to take the book down to the table. We'll open it up. We'll flip through the pages and talk a little bit about some of the things that you're going to get if you pick this book up for you and your gaming table. Let's head on down to the table. All right, everybody. So we are down to the table with the Lord of the Rings role-playing Moria, Shadow of Khazad dûm. Again, this is for the 5th edition rule set. So if you are somebody who likes playing 5th edition of Dungeons and Dragons, and you want to utilize those rules for specifically combat and for skill checks and all those wonderful things, you want to roll your d20, then this is the version of the One Ring Second Edition by Free League Publishing that they are putting out for 5th edition. So if you want to play Free League's kind of original mechanics, then you want to play the One Ring. If you want to be playing the 5th edition rule set, then you want the Lord of the Rings role playing. Those are their two versions of the same game, just utilizing different mechanics. This is again the Moria book. This is an expansion to that game, and so it is focused specifically on one iconic location in Middle Earth, and I am super excited by that. I am torn between the cover of the One Ring Second Edition version of Moria and this Lord of the Rings role-playing version of it. I love the kind of cool blue color that we get with the One Ring version, and it's the Doors of Durin. If you want to check that out, you can look at the other video that I put up for that, or I can right over here maybe pop up a quick picture of that book. But I also super love this bright orange cover with the Balrog here centrally located. He's got the whip of fire, he's got the sword of fire, and we notice no wings, no wings. So if you are somebody who really gets into Lord of the Rings or Middle Earth or all that stuff, you know that there's a little bit of a controversy around the idea of does the Balrog have wings or not. So this is a really cool picture, I think, or a version of the Balrog. I like it. I like that it's much more shadowy. He's a creature of shadow. And so you don't get a very specific look at the creature, but also we get these really teeny beady little pinpricks of fire for the eyes. So, big fan of the art for this cover. I do really like the cover though for the other version. Maybe comment in the comment section which version of the cover of this book do you prefer. So let's go ahead and flip the book over to the back. We'll read a little bit about what is going to be inside this book. For long ages, the great city of the Dwarodelf was the seat of dwarven kings. Deep they delved beneath the roots of the mountains in search of Mithril, the fabled Moria silver. Wonders they wrought there by the light of crystal lamps. But 1,000 years ago, Durin's Bane arose and drove the dwarves from their halls. The city fell into darkness, becoming an abode of orcs, goblins, and worse. But now there is hope. Countless orcs perished at the Battle of Five Armies, and it may be the halls of Durin lie empty once more, waiting to be reclaimed by those with the courage to face the long dark under the mountain. Maybe there are piles of treasure there waiting to be claimed. Maybe Mithril still glimmers in the mines under Caradhras. Cross the dread threshold, adventurer, and delve deep. Moria Shadow of Khazad dûm is a supplement for the Lord of the Rings role-playing, the 5e adaptation of the One Ring tabletop role-playing game based on the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. Set in the years before Balin's doomed expedition, this supplement contains a horde of patrons, landmarks, foes, encounters, and treasures that a lore master can use to construct their own adventures in Moria, from a single desperate journey in the dark to a grand campaign to retake Durin's halls. All right, so yes, this book is big. It is awesome. I'm going to tell you that up front. I'm a big fan of this book. And it is, again, focused, lovingly so, on a singular iconic location within Middle Earth. If you have read the books, if you've seen the movies, then especially so it's in the first movie, The Fellowship of the Ring, then Moria, the mines of Moria, Khazad dûm, is just such a cool place because so many really big moments happen there. You have the fight with the creature in the lake outside of the mine. You have Gandalf saying, "Speak, friend, and enter," and he says the friend name. And then you also have the fight against the orcs and the troll inside the mines. And then you have, yes, the big fight between Gandalf and the Balrog. And there's also one of my favorite moments of dialogue between some of the big characters of the book. You have Gandalf talking with Frodo about the fact that Bilbo pitied Gollum in The Hobbit and chose not to kill him, but to just escape with the ring. And that is a really great conversation touching on some pretty big themes in Tolkien's works. And so, big fan that Free League Publishing decided to focus an entire expansion book on this one location, giving us the opportunity to play in this place, in this world. So let's go ahead, let's open the book up, and let's give an overview of what you'll get if you bring this book to your table. All right, opening up the book, we see that the end pages are filled with this beautiful map of Moria, one of my favorite maps I have seen in a long time on end pages. It's really cool. We get this awesome bird's eye view look here where we are looking from like the top of the mountain down into the mountain overview of Moria. And then we have here a cross-section map, which reminds me a bit of some of the books that I had at my school library, where it would be like the cross-section of a ship, where they'd cut it in half and you could see into it. So that's what this is. Up here, we do have a legend about what each of these spaces are on the map. A lot of them are numbered, but it is not an extensive map of Moria. It's just some of the major locations, okay? So it's not like they're picking out every single possible room in all of Moria and putting it up here. This list would be much, much longer. But it's just a really cool overview. You get to see a little bit here on the outside of the mountain and then going inwards. So just a really cool map. I'm kind of a big fan. But not only did they give us this really cool map on the two end pages, but they also give us an awesome fold out, extra large version of the map. This thing is massive. I love it. It is huge, and it gives me a great opportunity to put this on the table in front of my players and let them take a look at what it is they're going to be endeavoring to do. And not only do we get this really cool, massive version that we can put onto the table for our players, but something that really has nothing specific to do with this book, with Moria, but with the game itself. The way combat works in the Lord of the Rings, the role-playing game, is we have stances that the players can take when they are in combat. And in the starter set for the One Ring second edition, they had a starter set and came with these little extra cards. But for the Lord of the Rings role-playing game, it doesn't have a starter set. So they never came out with these cards. But the cards were supposed to give you the 4 types of stances you can take in combat. You can take a forward position, you can take an open position or a defensive position, or you can be rearward so that you are doing ranged attacks. But those cards were pretty small, and sometimes I think people have a hard time envisioning what that's supposed to look like exactly. And so on the back of this massive map, they have given us a pretty cool diagram to utilize with our miniatures for combat. So we have this circular layout, and in the center is any of the player heroes who are going to be in a rearward position. And then we have next the defensive, then the open, and then the forward. And then out on the outer edge, we have foes who are standing back. And then we have these little teeny slots into the circle for any of the enemies who are moving forward into melee combat. So a really cool kind of idea or usage rather than a gridded map. We just have this way to envision a little bit more easily what it looks like when you're taking your different stances in combat in the Lord of the Rings role-playing game. It's got a lot of information along the sides as well, information about hero actions or adversary actions, what you do when you start a new round, lots of different information here. It even has over here at the top left information on determining range, which is fairly important for 5e when you're maybe casting some spells that you might have that talk about distances, and then they even talk about which type of weapons work at those longer distances as well. So a really, really cool addition to the game. Again, they give us this awesome map, but whoever came up with the idea of doing that for the combat and making it a little bit more easier to visualize, great idea, way to go. 10 out of 10 for that addition to the game. All right, next thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and flip over to the table of contents and see what all is in the book. So the book is broken down into 5 major sections, and then at the very end of the book, we have 2 smaller sections. We have the appendices, and then we have, though it's a smaller section, it still is around 30 pages or so of solo play rules. So if you are somebody out there who likes to play your role-playing game solo, or maybe you do it just because you have a harder time getting a group together, either way, I think this is another wonderful thing that Free League has been trying to do recently to make their games more readily accessible for people, is to create these solo rules and add them to their games. And again, that's what Free League is doing. Free League wants more people playing their games, and in order to do that, they keep making it more available to them. So, for example, solo play rules, but also the fact that they're just putting out this version of the book, the 5e rule set version of this book. They know that some people find it difficult to go from whole cloth, starting all brand new with a new rule set, and so they're trying to meet people where they are, and I think that's a great thing, because the more people playing, the better. So going forward, we also have then at the beginning of the book, the first section is our introduction. We have chapter 2, which is "And at the Gates the Trumpets Rang," and that is more information on Moria and how you're going to utilize it in your game. So again, very lore master focused rather than player focused. The introduction, definitely lore master and player focused. It's information that you're going to want to give your players so that they understand the history of the place where they're going. I think it's a good idea. Also, then, chapter 3, we have Journeys in the Dark. Lord of the Rings role playing has three kind of bigger pillars. You have your combat, you have your social encounters, and then you also have journeys. And just because we're going underground doesn't mean that journeys are going away. It just looks a little bit different. When people go in journeys in this game, they take on a specific role. There are just different roles in the journeying phase of this game here in Moria, because you don't have the exact same things that you would have above ground that you do now underground. So the fourth chapter is Fell Foes, where we focus on the different orcs and other creatures that the players will be coming up against when they go to Moria. And then chapter 5 is the meat of this book. It is the main portion. It is the largest portion. It's a little over 100 pages worth of information, called The Mansions of the Dwarves. And this is where we get all of the different locations, the landmarks for Moria. And so in Lord of the Rings role playing and One Ring Second Edition, landmarks are what we call the individual sites where our players are going to be going for the majority of the session that you're going to be running. So in Moria, we have a ton of different landmarks, and they're broken down here. It shows us into some regions. So we have the Dimrill Dale is region 1. Old Moria is region 2. The Duaro Delph is region 3. The Mountains of Moria is region 4. The Road is region 5. West Moria, region 6. The Deeps, region 7. And the Mines, region 8. So lots of different regions, and within each of those regions are multiple landmarks. Each landmark, then we get a little bit of background. We get information about the locations within that landmark. And then we get schemes and trouble, and that is those are the things that are going on at that landmark. What is kind of the main goal for the players? All of that information. So tons of information here just in the table of contents, understanding the layout of the book and what is going to be touched on. In the appendix, we get some information about Balin's expedition, which again is technically supposed to be happening after this portion, the time frame of this adventure for your players, but it does give you some information about how you could, if you would like to, play that expedition. And then you get some information about other people who have gone into Moria before. Aragorn is mentioned here specifically. And then information about Mithril itself, the dwarves who have called this world home. And then again, like I said, the rest of the book is all about solo play. We won't be touching anything really on the solo play just because there's a lot there. And also that's not a style of play that I normally get into. And I will leave you all of that to discover on your own if that's something you want to dive into. But again, I really appreciate that Free League is utilizing solo play rules so that they can make the game more readily accessible to other players. All right, let's go ahead and flip over the page to one of my favorite things in Free League books, and that is the chapter pages. The opening to each chapter, we always get these really great 2-page spread works of art from Free League Publishing. I love that they have continued to do that. I like getting to see great artwork, and I really enjoyed the art in the Moria book specifically. So we'll take a look at those as we flip through the book. So let's go ahead and take a look now at introduction and what is in there for you. So at the beginning of the introduction, we are given a really cool little synopsis of the city itself of Khazad dûm and some information about it. We also then get a breakdown of the book, a little overview, kind of what we just did reading through the table of contents. And then we get into the actual lore of the city and the mines. Really cool thing that, again, I've always heard the mines of Moria and Khazad dûm, but didn't really know when to use which term. And Khazad dûm is the city, Moria are the mines. Apparently Moria in Elvish means the Black Pit. So I didn't know that information. I am learning things already by reading this book, and I think that's fantastic. We get some information about the foundation of the city and the mines and why they're there and the dwarves who lived there. And then we get a really great two-page spread chronology of the city and the mine itself. We get the first age, the second age, the third age, which is the age in which the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings all take place. And then down here on the second page, the font all of a sudden in this one section is red. And that is because that is present day. It says here 2965. After the deaths of so many goblins at Erebor, some heroes risk entering Moria once again, the present day, for purposes of this guide. So we see here that 2049 is when Bilbo and Gandalf received Balin at Bag End. So that is after The Hobbit. And then, so we're looking at 14 years after The Hobbit or 16 years after The Hobbit. And then we have in 2989 is when Balin leads an expedition to reclaim Moria. So another 24 years after present day. So that gives us an idea of where in the timeline our campaigns or our adventures into Moria are taking place in accordance with everything else. So really cool. I like that. I'm excited that they gave us the timeline. Freely usually does that for most of their books. Really glad they decided to still do it here. Then we're into chapter 2. Another really great two-page spread piece of art. This might be my favorite two-page spread for this one. I love this overview looking down at this bridge, and we see our adventurers walking across the bridge. But of course, way up here, up among some of the columns of the city, we see two orcs looking down at the players. And that's something I do want to quickly touch on because I do love Lord of the Rings, so I want to get into a little bit of geekiness. And the idea here in the book is a couple of times we see two terms thrown around. We hear orcs and we also hear goblins. In Lord of the Rings, goblins and orcs are the same creatures. They are not two different creatures. There are a lot of different types of orcs, some that serve different masters, but goblins and orcs are the same creatures. One of the reasons we know this is because one of the swords in the books is called Orcrist, spelled O-R-C-I-S-T, and when that is translated, it means goblin cleaver. So orc being translated into goblin. Orcrist, goblin cleaver. So if you are interested in knowing, and you probably already knew, but if not, orc and goblin, same things in The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings. All right, so utilizing Moria in your game, chapter 2 discusses that. Then they give us some ideas for our campaign focus. This is a really great portion of the books. Again, specifically, this is for lore masters, and they give you some focuses, and then within those focuses, you are given patrons who might be utilized in bringing the players on board for that focus. So the first example we're given here is searching for treasure. Within that, we actually have a handful of sub-focuses. So legends of treasure, stealing from the orcs, rival thieves. So 3 different sub-focuses within the overall idea of just, we're going to Moria to search for treasure. Maybe we've been sent there to look specifically for a legend of treasure. Maybe we're specifically just going in there to steal from the orcs, who of course stole from the dwarves to begin with. And then maybe we're going up against a group of rival thieves who are also traveling into Moria to get some of this treasure. We get other focuses such as searching for mithril, the perilous path through the mine of Moria, through Khazad dûm. Maybe we're there for vengeance. Maybe we are a group of dwarves who are here to avenge our fallen ancestors. And then we have questing for ring lore. And again, in each of these different ones, we get a few ideas for suggested patrons who might be sending our players to look for these things. We go into Moria and the wider world, and here we get some information on the dwarves as Durin's folk, and then we meet some NPCs, some of which could be the patrons that your players are meeting with, and if that's the case, they will have a little spot in their bio about being a patron. Some of these people have shown up in earlier books in this game. And so if that is true, then you will have a mention of that here in this book. So specifically, I'll point out here that we have Lord Molin of Harmelt. And so right here, it says in that section that as described in Ruins of Eriador on page 25. And so if you have the book Ruins of Eriador, then go to page 25 and you can have more information on this specific individual as well. Again, I did state that this book is the 5th edition version of the game for the One Ring 2nd edition. This is the Lord of the Rings Role-Playing 5e. Trying to get this to focus now that I've thrown off the focus. There we go. And so all of the words, the content are the same between the two versions of this book, except for information that pertains to the D20 mechanics. All of our stat blocks in this book look like stat blocks that you would see in 5th edition games. So that's like the big difference. All the art and most of the words, like 98% of this book, is the same as the book for Moria in the game The One Ring 2nd edition. So we continue on meeting some of the other NPCs that your players might meet in the game. And then we get to another really cool section that's titled A Name of Ill Omen. In the game, your players are going to be trying to gain information about Moria before going there, more than likely. They're going to be looking for rumors and information about the location. These are a few pages that focus on rumors that your players might get from other NPCs. And it's really fun. I like this because they give you a table for false rumors. So if they roll for some information but they fail, this is going to be some information that you could give them, stuff that is incorrect. Then you get a page here that has some information that are, if they succeed, these are truthful informations, rumors about Moria. Then if they do a really good job, maybe they roll really high for their information, for their skill check, then you can even give them some information about a famous landmark. And if they do really, really good, then you can give them information about an obscure landmark, something that would be harder for them to have known about. And beside each one of these landmarks, there is the page number later in the book where you can find the information and the rumor specifically that you would give them. See, here you have a sentence or two that you can give them. These don't have those sentences. That's because on these pages, that's where you would find the little paragraph about the landmark that you can give to your players. So really nice bit of information for the lore master so that you can seed rumors for your players about the location. Now, you might think that Moria is just this gigantic mega dungeon, which it kind of is. But at the same time, this is not one of those mega dungeons where every single room you go into, there's going to be treasure, there's going to be creatures to fight. They want you to really give the idea of this being an ancient place that is not really all that overpopulated with creatures or people. And so they give you some themes in this section on running Moria that you can focus on as the lore master. And within each of these themes, again, are some sub-themes, and underneath each sub-theme, there are some bullet points. So we have the idea of the themes of wonder, really focusing on the vast and intricate, beyond imagination size of this place. We even have then the theme of sorrow and fear, where we focus on Arda Mard. Arda is the world that we're in, and how this is just an example of how this place is being marred by evil, and lots of really good information in that section. Now, Journeys in the Dark is chapter 3. This is another one of the doubles page spread works of art. Really cool. This is kind of the iconic moment where we're fighting the orcs and the troll. I like it a lot. But Journeys in the Dark is going to focus on, like I said earlier in the table of contents section, the journeying phase of the game, and it focuses on the different jobs or roles that your players can take when they're in the journeying phase. We have the scouts, we have the lookouts, and we have the delvers. It says here which skill or ability they're going to be utilizing for those checks. So you can see that there. We've got the scouts and the lookouts are using wisdom. Scouts exploration and wisdom perception for the lookouts, and then we have intelligence investigation for the delvers. The journey itself is broken into 3 parts. We have set the journey path. Where are we going and how are we getting there? We have make pathfinding checks. So that's when everybody's making their checks. And then we have the event or the ending of the journey, and then a resolution with an event. So lots of really good information about how to run journeys there. And then some information on describing Moria as your players are journeying through, ways to kind of try to help you keep the descriptions new and fresh so that you're not just saying the same thing over and over again. And then we have some random kind of encounters, different things that could happen to your players, all of them being rollable charts where you can either roll a d12 and get information, or you can just choose the one that you want to utilize. And then we have a random chamber generator because, like I said, the map at the beginning is not exhaustive. There are other places within this massive complex. And so you have your random chamber generator that you can utilize to create a bunch of other places. Some of them might be guard posts or armory, workshops, forges, orc nests, areas that are utterly ruined, all sorts of different things here with little descriptions for you to utilize in the game. And then also a random orc band generator, because you are going to be coming up against groups of orcs. Who do they work for? Which group of orcs are they a part of? And that's going to give you some information for that. Now we're into chapter 4, Fell Foes. Now we do get here another image of the Balrog that we had on the front, but in this one, we all of a sudden have a little bit of shadow here up above the shoulder area or region of the creature. Maybe it does have wings. So again, the controversy lives. All right, so we talk about orcs. Now, Moria is mostly going to be populated by orcs. There are other creatures there, but orcs are the main game that is here. And we have a couple of flavors of orcs. We have the orcs of Moria. We have the orcs of Udun, and we have the orcs of Mordor. Each one of these groups going to be here for different reasons, and these different sections tell you about who they serve and why they might be here in Moria. You might have orcs that hate each other as much as they hate your players. Get a little bit into dwarves, specifically slave dwarves that might be here under the thrall of the orcs. And then we get into the Balrog of Moria. That's right, the big bad. And we are given a stat block for the Balrog known as Durin's Bane. And we can see here that the Balrog is challenge level 19. So almost as bad as some of the creatures get. This is going to be a tough fight if your players are trying to get in here to take on the Balrog. And then we get into a few other foul things. We have undead that they might run across. We have cave bats and stone toads, tappers and marrow eaters, all sorts of fun things to throw at your players. And of course, you can throw in other things at your players as well. Next, we have chapter 5, the mansions of the dwarves. All right, so this section of the book is going to tell us about all of the different landmarks that have been pre-generated for this book, for the campaign. There are 26 of them. We are obviously not going to go over each and every one of them, but I am going to showcase one of them to at least show you the layout that they utilize for landmarks. It's the same thing, the same layout that they've been giving in previous books, but I'll go ahead and showcase this one as well. But before we do that, we do get a little bit more information about the delving of the dwarves here in the mines, and we get some information about the deeps, and we do get a section here all about ways in and out of Khazad dûm, of Moria, which is really interesting because you need to know where your players are going to be entering into and what landmarks are closest to those entrances. It's broken down here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 different possible ways in and or out of the mines of Moria. They mentioned specifically the landmark where you can enter, and they have the region that that landmark is in, and then a very quick note about that landmark. Specifically, we have our example here of the Doors of Durin in West Moria, and our note is speak friend and enter. So that's the one that Gandalf and the hobbits and the Fellowship all used to get into Moria in the books. So all of this is broken down again into their different regions. We went over those regions at the beginning here when we talked about the table of contents, and within each of those regions are a handful or so landmarks. Let's go ahead and just randomly choose a page and see which landmark we get. All right, so we get the Vault of Uruk-Tharbun. The Vault of Uruk-Tharbun. Hopefully I'm saying that one correct. It says here specifically that this is one of the obscure landmarks. So this would be something that you might get a rumor about if you roll very, very well, as best as you can possibly roll. Maybe a critical natural 20, and you would be able to find rumors about this location. The rumor reads, the dwarves piled all their fabulous wealth in one big treasure hoard, but never looked at it. Why? Because everyone knows dwarves are greedy and love gold, and there was so much gold in that pile that if a dwarf looked at it, they'd be driven mad by the desire to possess it all. Old lore, DC 20. The treasure vault of Khazad dûm was guarded by a family of dwarves who were trained from youth to be the keepers of the hoard. Neither burglar nor dragon ever stole so much as a single gold coin from the hoard of Moria, for it was guarded by an impenetrable maze. This is a really cool one. I'm glad we just drew this one randomly as I just open up the book. We've got a couple of paragraphs here about the background of this location or this landmark. Then we have the locations within the landmark, and each of those have some description as well. Then we get a map showcasing all of those locations within this landmark. Each landmark will come with usually a little map of the locations and or some art to go along with it, maybe the creatures that are there, that type of information. And then we get the section at the end here, the schemes and troubles. So this one specifically is talking about navigating the maze, and then some possible dwarven traps. That is freakishly huge. Oh my gosh. Okay, I don't know about you guys. House centipedes, I don't love them, and this has me freaking out a little bit. So that is awesome. So we've, again, real quickly, we get the rumor, we get some old lore, we get the background of the landmark, we get the different locations within that landmark, we get the art for the landmark, and then we also get some information about the schemes and troubles happening at that landmark. And that is done 26 different times in this book for the different landmarks that we have already pre-generated for you as a lore master to run for your players. So there is tons of options for either coming here and doing a campaign, or possibly coming here, doing one session, leaving, coming back again, doing another session. We've got multiple patrons who could be talking to your player heroes about getting here. Maybe they find out that your player heroes have already been here once before and they want them to go back again for something different. So lots of options for you as the lore master, and it makes me incredibly excited. This book, I've been waiting. I had been waiting for this book to show up for so long. So lots of stuff. Again, that's the biggest portion of the book. But then we get back to the very end and we get the appendix. The appendix touches on Balin's expedition and possibly trying to play. If you wanted to play the expedition, there's a little bit of information there. If you wanted to do that, it's a failed expedition, but maybe you wanted to give it a go. And then I think this was kind of a cool little addition as well. I too once passed the Dimril Gate, and so we get information about Thrain and we get information about Aragorn. Both of these people journeyed into Moria as well, and we get a little bit of information about their quests into Moria, specifics about Mithril, and then an index of some magical treasure, information about the dwarves of Nagrand and Belgost, and then all the information about solo play in the Long Dark. And we're not going to dive into this. We're going to leave that for you to discover on your own. Everybody, that is the Lord of the Rings role-playing Moria Shadow of Khazad dûm. I will give you my final thoughts as we come back up from the table. All right, everybody, we are back from the table, having just finished taking a look at the Lord of the Rings role-playing Moria, Shadow of Khazad dûm for the 5th edition rule set. And as I'm sure you could tell by watching the video, I'm incredibly excited, impressed, and grateful for this book. Impressed because Free League Publishing continues to put out phenomenal material for role players, as well as I am grateful because I've read the books, I've watched the movies, I love Middle Earth, and to have the ability to play games in that world, in that setting, it just makes me incredibly happy. I am so grateful to Free League Publishing for focusing an entire book on the location of Khazad dûm, of Moria, because it's one of the most iconic locations in all of Middle Earth. It's one of my favorite locations in the book and the movie because you get so many great moments from that. You get the fighting of the creature in the water right outside the doors of Durin. You get the fight between the orcs and the troll inside the mines. You get a really great moment of discussion, deep discussion between Gandalf and Frodo about Bilbo's pity on Gollum and not killing him when he had the chance. And you get the big battle between Gandalf and the Balrog. There's just so many iconic moments in this wonderful location. And the fact that Free League Publishing decided to take a whole book to focus on Moria is phenomenal, and I'm so grateful that they have done it. It's a really good book. There's so many locations within the mine for you and your players to focus on. There's different themes. Again, the breaking up of the themes of why they're there, the patrons who are sending them there, the massive map that is double-sided where you've got the map of Moria on one side and you flip it over and it gives you a better understanding and a place to place your minis when focusing on combat. And maybe you're not doing it on a gridded map, maybe you're going to use this map, and it just gives you a good way of envisioning how you're laying out your characters in combat. Just a really great expansion. And don't forget, it is an expansion. If you want to play the full game, you need to go pick up the core rulebook for the Lord of the Rings Role-Playing 5e. Free League Publishing, again, continuing to knock it out of the park, especially for me. So thank you to Free League Publishing for sending us a copy of this book. And everybody, thank you for watching. I hope it has helped you decide if this is a book that you need to have for you and your players at your table. That's our focus of our videos, is this a book for you? Telling you as much as we possibly can so you can make that decision. If you like the video, go ahead and give it a like and maybe subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. You can check out all the other great videos that we're putting out here on a daily basis. And everybody, head on over to freeleaguepublishing.com to check out not just this game, but all the other phenomenal games that they're putting out regularly. Thank you for watching, everybody, and until we talk again, keep on playing games.